Fracturing Consent by Edward Herman and Noam Chomsky. This one came recommended by multiple fans of the show and was, I think, a gift from a fan of the show, a gift from Matt Frost, so thanks very much, Matt. This is Herman and Chomsky's assessment and examination of American media, and their central thesis is that although America doesn't have, the United States of America doesn't have sort of state-run propaganda media, nevertheless, the media, in their opinion, for a large part, follows what they call a propaganda model. So it's largely accepting of the government's authority, and it largely takes the government's side. Even when criticising the government, actually, what they show, and they go through a lot of examples and a lot of case studies in a lot of different areas, what they show is that even when the American media tends to criticise the government, they do it in a way that often accepts the kind of central premises that the government's authority is grounded on. So they talk about Ronald Reagan backing fascist death squads in Guatemala, and the American media was kind of alright with that. They talk and compare about murders in Soviet states versus murders in US client states, and the different ways the US media talks about those. That's really, really cool. And of course, they talk about the Vietnam War and the Cambodian campaigns and the Laos campaigns as well. Those, I understand, are kind of big things that media studies students often examine, like the role of the media in Vietnam. And there's this idea that the media lost the Vietnam War by showing the American public how horrific what the Americans were doing was. And what Chomsky and Herman show is that actually not really. What the American media did was even largely supportive of the ideals behind the war, and largely repeated the idea that the Americans' presence in Vietnam was defending South Vietnam rather than like an imperialist invasion which resulted in possibly millions of unnecessary deaths. If you live in the USA, or indeed you don't, if you live in a country which is affected by the USA, which is to say basically if you kind of live on Earth, I would recommend picking this one up. And last and by no means least, because I really, really wanted to talk about this, it's my favourite novel of all time. I've just reread it. Mary Shelley, The Last Man. So The Last Man, as the title rather implies, is about the last human being on Earth. Lionel Verney is his name, but it's not just about him being the last man, it's his whole life story, from birth to education, to meeting the woman who becomes his wife, to meeting his best friend, right up to the plague that then leaves him as the last man. I love this book, I've read it multiple times, I love it for multiple reasons. One of them is that I think it contains some of the most astute and beautiful writing ever put down in the English language. So there's a paragraph that comes right at the start where Lionel Verney's best friend has fallen in love. His life was swallowed up in the existence of his beloved, and his heart beat only in unison with the pulsations that vivified hers. This was the secret law of his life. He loved and was beloved. The universe was to him a dwelling to inhabit with his chosen one, and not either a scheme of society or an enchainment of events that could impart to him either happiness or misery. What though life and the system of social intercourse were a wilderness, a tiger-haunted jungle? Through the midst of its errors, in the depths of its savage recesses, there was a disentangled and flowery pathway through which they might journey in safety and delight. That is one of my favourite paragraphs in text, like ever. The book is absolutely full of moments like that, just unspeakably beautiful, specific images which are just gorgeous. The final paragraph of The Last Man is so moving. I have sat and just read the final paragraph and the final pages of it in moments in my life where I've really been hit in tough times, really been hit with despair. I've sat and I've read this paragraph and it keeps me going. One of the other reasons I find it very fascinating is that the book is set in the late 21st century, and it's so fascinating to see what somebody from the 19th century thought the 21st century would be like. So everyone in the book still rides horses and has horses and carriages because she couldn't have predicted the automobile, obviously. But they do have airships. The British Empire is still around in the year 2092. So like that never went away and is not criticised at all. She obviously didn't think that it might be a good thing that might go away. There's still an aristocracy that has a lot of political power within Britain, although one of the major plot points is that Britain has just become a republic. They've just given up the monarchy, and the guy who would have been the king had the monarchy continued is a kind of central character within the story. And actually that's quite a good segue into a kind of health warning, shall we say, that since it was written in the 1800s, like, some of it's pretty racist. And there's some other, like, slightly think, oh wow, you really didn't think that would change? Like, the role of women doesn't seem to have advanced that much since the 1830s, according to Mary Shelley. Oh, and there's a lot of stuff in there about how the aristocracy, and in particular Adrian, the guy who would have been the king, is kind of naturally superior, and even though he's not the king, like, he obviously just commands every situation he's in because he's just born superior and born better. So there's a lot of, like, quite gross stuff about that as well. The paragraphs that describe when he meets the woman who becomes his wife are just so... in fact, I'm going to read them to you because why not? This video's probably running long, but I'm going to read it anyway because it's gorgeous. This is the moment where he first sees Idris, the woman who becomes his wife. In what fitting terms of wonder and delight, in what choice expression and soft flow of language can I usher in the loveliest, wisest, best? How, in poor assemblage of words, convey the halo of glory that surrounded her, the 1,000 graces that waited unwearied on her? The first thing that struck you on beholding that charming countenance was its perfect goodness and frankness. Candour sat upon her brow, simplicity in her eyes, heavenly benignity in her smile. Her tall, slim figure bent gracefully as a poplar to the breezy west, and her gait, goddess-like, was that of a winged angel newly alit from the floor of heaven. Just, yeah, gorgeous. This video is definitely running over, so that's all the time I've got this week. Thank you to everyone who sent me books. If you ever want to send me a book, I've got an Amazon wishlist. Feel free to send me something. Thank you very much for watching, and I will see you in the next video that I make. Bye!